So the focus is the object of love. Not I, but thou. Not I, but you. Naham, naham, tuhum, tuhum. It's a very interesting parable by Sri Ramakrishna. Naham, naham, tuhum, tuhum. We are studying from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sankhya Yoga, verse 47, Karmanyevadhikaraste. We have heard this sloka many times, especially when we were watching the Mahabharata. Definitely we have all heard this. What is the meaning of this? It has got a very deeper meaning. All the mantras or the stotras or the slokas have got two types of meanings. One is what is known as the Shabdartha. That means the meaning of the words. There are so many words and each word has got its own meaning. And when you put together, it becomes a Vakyartha. That means the meaning of a sentence. But then there is another kind of meaning which is called as Gudha. Gudha means hidden. Gudha means hidden, Guhya or Gudha. That which is very hidden. There is a hidden meaning. When we study the scriptures, we have to try and find out the Gudha Artha of a sloka. That is possible when you deeply meditate on the verse, deeply meditate on the sloka or on the mantra. Then it will reveal its real meaning to us. So the Vakshastris, that means the scientists, scientists of the words or the grammarians, they say that it is easy to understand the Shabdartha and the Vakyartha, but it is extremely difficult to understand the Gudhartha, the hidden meaning. And who can reveal it? The scriptures, the Shastra, Shruti Mata, the mother Shruti herself will reveal to you when the right time comes. And that right time will come if we persist in our meditation upon those verses. It is very important that we persist in our meditation on those verses. However, this verse, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, this verse has also got an external meaning and an internal meaning. The external meaning is very clear. Te adhikaraha karmani eva. You have competence only to perform action, in action only. Phaleshu ma kadachana. Never can you claim the fruits of your actions. So we will come to the meaning later, the hidden meaning later. And then ma karma phalahetuhu bhuhu. Let not the motive force of your actions be the results. This is a very interesting point that Sri Krishna makes. Any action for that matter arises from what? It arises from desire. Any action for that matter. It arises from desire. And desire is invariably connected with the results of actions. So, how is it that Sri Krishna is asking us that we should not have the motive force of action as the results. And then again he says, he wants ma karma phala hetuhu bhuhu mate sangoho astu akarmani. Sangaha astu akarmani. At the same time, let not this attitude lead you to laziness, lead you to non-performance of any action. You need to perform action, but at the same time, you need to be detached from the action that you are performing. Many commentators have written commentaries on this. All of them have expressed their own view, and if we delve deep into ourselves, we will find an unique answer within ourselves. We need not accept others' views or others' commentaries as the proof. We have to be our own proof. This is a very important thing that the Shastra says to us. Shastra tells us, scriptures tells us, try to find out the meaning for your own self. A formula is given. Now you need to work out the formula in your own unique manner, and then you have to arrive at the conclusion by yourself. During Sri Krishna's time, the term karma or act was used mainly for ritualistic practices, yajna, yaga, and other sacrifices. That was what was prevalent at that time. So any action that you perform is because you want some result. You want to go to heaven here in this life. In fact, they used to perform karma more for the afterlife than for the present life itself. So Sri Krishna had to break this this cycle of karma or of insistence on the actions as that which leads you to heaven and so on and so forth. Therefore, he says here, ma karma phala hetuhu, that do not perform your actions just because you are going to get something in return. Why? Because it causes sangaha. Sangha means attachment. Why does attachment come to me? These attachments, they rise from the stubborn I, because I have saturated myself with this first person singular number I, so much so that it has spread its tentacles of ownership on everything that it perceives. So everything that I see should become mine. Me and mine. I and mine. Sri Ramakrishna, I had mentioned it last time. Sri Ramakrishna very clearly mentions I and mine is nothing but ignorance. What does it do? It snuffs out our pure joy and freedom from ourselves. This I sense all the time. Everything revolves around this first person singular number of I. So Sri Krishna says, if you want to have a balanced life, if you want to become peaceful, if you want to attain to the highest, then try to get rid of this attachment to your I. That is the ego feeling that I am everything, that I own everything, and that everything belongs to me. Practicing work or performing work as a yoga, it throws off this dead weight that we have placed upon ourselves, this dead weight of burden of attachments that we have. The only one and only way to remove attachment is through conscious practice. conscious practice of this one thing called as detachment. So detachment is from these three things, or it works on three levels. What is it? One is the mental detachment, manasika, and then vachika, that means through speech detachment to our speech, and then kaika, that means detachment to our actions through the physical body. We function in this world with the help of these three instruments: the body, the speech, and the mind. Therefore, detachment must apply in all these three levels for us to be able to perform any action successfully, and with this with this teaching of Sri Krishna of gaining freedom. How to detach mentally is the first question that we shall try to tackle. Of course, it is extremely difficult to practice, easy to speak about it, but Swami Vivekananda says, if you want to achieve anything in life, have these three P's, capital letter P, three P's. What are they? Purity, patience, and perseverance. Wherever these three are there, if there is purity, thought, word, and deed, if there is patience in thought, word, and deed, and if there is perseverance in your thought, word, and deed, nothing in the world can stop you from achieving the goal of human life. So, therefore, he says here, first become detached mentally. How to detach mentally is the topic that we shall take up today. We shall try to dwell on all these three aspects, that means mental, then speech, and also physical, all these three. How to detach yourself? I'll just give you an example. Last time I gave this example. If I send you an email to an email ID wrongly addressed, with probably even an alphabet here or there, what happens? It bounces back. Naturally, it bounces back. So a wrongly addressed email, it just bounces back and it gets rejected from the server. We shall have to adopt this in our life also. Difficult, no doubt, but as I said, enormous patience, enormous perseverance is there. It is possible. So all the praise and all the blame that are addressed to this first person singular I, it needs to be rejected and bounced back to the source. It should be bounced back to the source. Attachment to praise is as bad as attachment to blame. It is equally dangerous. So therefore, we should try. If somebody says a good word about me, I am in cloud 9. And if somebody blames me, then I am in the depths of depression. So therefore, we should think that all of this that is happening, it comes from the divine and goes back to the divine. Let us bounce it back to the divine. If somebody praises me, I should say, "Oh Lord, praise be to you." Somebody blames me, I say, "Oh Lord, blame be to you." Of course, we are very very fast to do that, the second one, but the first one is difficult. So, but let us remember this one example of bouncing back of the email to the source. Secondly, whatever work that we do in Karma Yoga is performed out of love for Dharma. That is called as work for work's sake. Love for Dharma or love for God. So the focus is the object of love. Not I, but thou. Not I, but you. Naham, tu. It's a very interesting parable by Sri Ramakrishna. Naham, tu. Most of us are from India, so we know. In India, there are these carders. If your cotton mattress has torn or something, the carder will come home with that carding thing. In Tamil, it's called villu. So they come with that carding machine, and then he will do the carding. That means he will separate the cotton, and then we'll stitch back the mattress. And then I don't know what it is known in Gujarati, but anyway, you understand the example. So the carding and the strings of this carding tool is made out of cow's entrails. That's how it is made out of, because it's very tenacious. It has got a lot of tensile. It has got a lot of tension. So that's what he did. So Sri Ramakrishna, he says, when a calf is born, it will cry out, hamba, 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 hamba. I mean, of course, it is calling the mother, but another way of putting it is hamba, I am, I have come. So care for me, hamba, hamba. So then it goes through its life, and then still that hamba, hamba keeps on going. Only when it is dead and the entrails are taken by whoever does the processing, takes it and then starts carding it, then it will make a sound. Tuhu, tuhu, thou, tuhu, tuhu, tumi, tuhu. Just driving this example. This example is to drive this idea home, that this aham, this I will not at all go throughout our life, but we can make it go when we say to the Lord, it is thee and thee alone. So when that happens, then we are safe. So the more of this I goes out, the more of dharma comes in. And last time I also mentioned your example, Shaurin Bhai's example of Draupadi Vastraharan. Only when she gives up her protection of herself, then the Lord comes and protects her. Till then, he will think, all right, she is taking care of herself, so why should I come in? So that is how it is. It is the nature of the world, however, to shower praise or to heap blame upon us. We have plenty of that. But most of us, we have no problems with the praise, but when it comes to blame, we are in the defensive. So if I am very greedy for praise, then I will be fearful of criticism. You will observe this. Those people who are extremely greedy for name, fame, and approbation, they are extremely fearful of criticism. They are very protective of themselves. They will not let anybody criticize them, and if they do, then they will take the life out of the the person who does. So therefore, both this praise and blame is highly addictive, if I can say that. It is highly addictive. So, to spare myself of this addiction, I must find a way to diligently deal with such praise or blame. So, Karma Yoga says, make an effort to remain unaffected by both this praise and blame. Bounce it back to the divine. The next point is to introspect. What is praise? What is success? It is nothing but a stage in our life when we are recognized, when we get some good points. If it is genuine, if somebody is praising us, and if it is genuine, then it reflects the appreciation of the dharma that I am following. That means somebody is recognizing that what I am doing is right or correct. Therefore, it is dharma that has done that and not me. This is one way of dealing with it. The idea of duty is another attachment to which we are all attached. Different duties come to us at different times. When we are children, when we are students, we have a kind of duty. When we are grown up, we have another kind of duty. When we are in society, we have another kind of duty, and we carry all of them. But if I love what I do, if I love the work that I do, I will do it, whether it is duty or not. If I love what I am doing, I will do it, whether it is a duty or not. That love must be there that love element must be there in all actions. If I do not love it, then I do it reluctantly, and it is nothing but a forced labor only. It does not bring any joy. Only those who are masters, they enjoy. They really feel the joy. Slaves do not enjoy the work. So Karma Yogi works out of love, not out of compulsion. Only such work is liberating. Sri Swami Vivekananda says, work as a master and not as a slave. Work as a master, not as a slave. So if we must do something, why not find ways to want to do it instead of unwillingly doing it? It's difficult, but we should want to do it. Even if the chores that we do not like, if we can start liking to do it, or if we can think of it as something that is essential for ourselves and for the society, then it will bring us joy. But if I do something without joy, without any love in it, it will not bring me any joy. So unwillingly we should not do any work. Firstly, since all work belongs to the Lord, belongs to the divine, we should train our mind to love it. Any action for that matter belongs to the divine. Secondly, in Karma Yoga, it is not what we do that matters as to how we do it. Of course, a Karma Yogi cannot do anything unethical, immoral. He will not be able to do anything like that at all, because all of the actions that are flowing through him or her is coming from the divine. Therefore, will not do anything unethical. Thirdly, a Karma Yogi makes a very conscious effort to rise above this idea of duty for love of God or for dharma, for the sake of dharma or for love of God. Another helpful practice is to remember that everything passes away, nothing lasts forever. This action that I am performing, it will also pass away. I have to do it for the time being, but that also will pass away. This coronavirus thing also will pass away one day. There's no doubt about that. Secondly, we come to detachment through speech, vakya. If our mind and the speech, if they are in harmony, then this speech becomes an expression of our thoughts. If our mind and speech are in harmony, then the speech becomes an expression of our thoughts. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say in Bengali, Mon mukh ek karo. At all times, let your speech and your thoughts be in synchrony. Let it be the same. Sri Ramakrishna, if you read the life or teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, you will see that he would forbid his disciples to tell a lie even for fun. Because he would say that it would reflect your mental attitude. If you are telling a lie even for as a joke, that will reflect your mental attitude. Now the question naturally arises, what if I have not yet realized this harmony? To be very frank, all of us here who are discussing this, we all have not achieved this harmony. Definitely, there is no doubt. If any one of you has achieved, my hats off to you. So, the answer is, this is nothing but a sadhana. We have to keep on making the effort by consciously employing our speech to reflect our thoughts, through detachment. Words are extremely powerful. No, words are known as the crystallized thoughts. Words are known as the crystallized thoughts. In Raghuvamsha, there is a beautiful book by Kalidasa. It is called Raghuvamsha. It talks about the lineage of the Raghu clan, Sri Rama up to Sri Rama and Lava Kusha. There, Kalidasa, he begins it with one wonderful verse. Vak artha viva sampraktau, vak artha pratipattaye, jagatah pitarau vande, parvati parameshwarau. It's a wonderful verse. Vak and artha. Vak means the word, and artha, the meaning of the word. Vak artha viva sampraktau. They are intertwined, as it were. So, word invokes an image. Sound invokes sound of a word. It invokes an image, and that image gives expression to all our actions. It gives expression to all of our actions. For example, a novel becomes a powerful movie for us because of the proper use of those words. It gives expression to the image, and that image is carried over by the director, and then it flashes out as a wonderful movie. So therefore, a karma yogi has to be careful about the use of the words. We had a Swami, his name was Swami Ranganathanandaji. He later became one of the presidents of the Ramakrishna order. He was from Kerala. Ranganathanandaji was very well known the world over for his extraordinary oratorial skills, and he has quite a number of books to credit. And we have never using any negative expressions in his talks or even in one-to-one conversations. He would never use any negative expressions at all. That he said, it came from his mother. One day, as a little boy, he was playing out with his friends. He was from Trichur in Kerala. He was playing out with his friends, and as they were playing, the play got very interesting, and then there was some fight between the children, and so he used some bad words, so to say, to one of the playmates. His mother heard those words from inside the home, came out, called him, "Hey Shankar, come here." So he came home, and then she told, "My child, do you know that walk or the speech is also known as Vani?" He said, "Yes, I know." "Do you know that another name of Mother Saraswati is Vani?" He said, "Oh, is that so? I didn't know." Then she said, "My child, words are coming from Vani, the Mother Saraswati. She has given you the voice to express herself. Never in your life misuse the Vani. Never again misuse your words in your life." And he used to tell us that made such a tremendous impact on me that from that day I determined that come what may, I will not use any words that is unbecoming. That is unbecoming. Because the Vani, later when he joined the Ramakrishna order, one of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Akhandananda, he was a young boy at that time, so he went to see him, and Akhandananda looked at him and said, "Shankar," that was his name at that time, later he became Swami Ranganathananda, "Shankar, Vani, that Mother Saraswati will dance on your lips." Many people, he was the one who started the Vedanta centers in Australia. He used to come regularly from 69 to 83. He used to come to Sydney and other places. Anyway, so the idea is that the Vani or the Vak, it springs from our mental attitude. If our mind is clean, then the words also will be clean, and vice versa also. If we can use our words in such a manner that it is acceptable and it is pleasant to the people around us, then it will also give a cleaner heart to us. Silence, the next thing is silence. Silence is golden. Speech is silver, silence is golden. And sometimes silence can be more eloquent than words. In the Dakshinamurti Stotra, a representation or an image of Dakshinamurti is given over there. Gurostu maunam vyakhyanam shishyastu chinna samshayaha. The Guru speaks through silence. If you have seen the picture of Dakshinamurti, you will see he is sitting under an Ashwatha tree or Kalpavriksha, and then around him are disciples. Most of them are much older to him. So he says, how does he communicate? Through his silence. Gurostu maunam vyakhyanam shishyastu chinna samshaya. The doubts of the disciple are torn asunder, as it were. Ramana Maharshi was one such great rishi. When he would sit there, Swami Damodaranji was here with us in Brisbane for quite some time. He was with Ramana Maharshi for a couple of years, or a couple of months rather, and he would say that Maharshi would sit in that hall in Tiruvannamalai, and he would be lying down with his hand on his under his head, and then he would sometimes great scholars would come with lots of doubts in their minds. They would come to question him, and he would say that when they would come and sit, he would not speak a single word to them. He would just look at them with a stare in his eyes, those powerful eyes. He would just look at them through those wonderful eyes, and all their doubts would completely be removed. These are glaring examples. These are examples that has happened not too long ago. So it is, therefore, the silence is sometimes more eloquent than the words. So therefore, practice of mauna, silence, sometimes it also preserves one's detachment to the work or to the world, so to say. So periodical practice of silence is very good. Another method, one of our Swamis, he suggests, is that once a month, a day, one day, or even half day, start it with half day in a month, switch off all the devices at home. Silence, full silence. It also helps, definitely. So mauna is so very important in our life. And what this does is, it helps us to enjoy our own company. We are our worst enemies, unfortunately. We cannot face our own selves. That is why we are always with all these devices, with all these things. So therefore, it is very important that once a month, one day a month, or half a day in a month, let us try to enjoy our own company. Swami Vivekananda says, out of purity and silence comes the word of power. The word of power. So out of purity and silence, the words come, and they are extremely powerful. Another way, another method is following a very simple rule. If my words can help someone to become calm, if it helps someone to heal or to improve a situation, then I will talk. Otherwise, I will hold my silence. This is another method. A good listener, it is said, a good listener accomplishes much more than a person of irrelevant talk. Irrelevant talker achieves nothing, so accomplishes nothing. A good listener accomplishes more. So therefore, a karma yogi is one who listens, who reflects, and who talks only when it is needed, and who also performs what is appropriate. This brings us to the third aspect, that is detachment through action, kayika. Actions are also expression of our thoughts. There's no doubt about that. Actions of a person who is detached will be extremely powerful. There is no doubt about that. There is no impurity in the actions that such person does. What does an action do? Let us just reflect for a moment. An action produces a reaction, isn't it? All of us are aware of it. An action produces a reaction. The reaction might be pleasant or it may be unpleasant. Correct? It may be pleasant or it may be unpleasant. So it may produce reactions like anxiety, regret, or resentment, and so on and so forth. If an action, this is the test, if an action that I am performing, if it produces any anxiety, if it produces any regret, etc., then that action is not dharmic action, not an action of a karma yogi. Because such actions are performed having view a result. It is result oriented. If it doesn't happen, then I am anxious. I am performing some action, and if I am performing it with great anxiety, with great regret, and so on and so forth, then it is an adharmic action. When successful, when I am performing an action, and if I see that it is going to be very successful, what do? I am in cloud 9. I become extremely happy or overjoyed, so to say. Truly detached action, proper detached action is free from these three things: anxiety or overjoy or regret. A truly detached action is free from all of these three things. That is anxiety, overjoy, or of regret. That's why Sri Krishna says here, work for work's sake. Why should I work for work's sake? Because it is good to do good. It gives me joy. It makes me happier, there is no doubt. Or it is pleasing to do God's work because it is a puja, it is an offering to the divine. So the ideal of Karma Yoga is to work hard but not become attached, not become bothered about the results. Attachment by its very nature, it binds us and it causes physical and mental stress. There is no doubt about that. Secondly, if we perform any action with the results in view, it prevents us from giving out our 100%. It prevents us from doing that. Therefore, Sri Krishna will talk later about Vijnana, the science. The work, when it is done as a Vijnana, as a science, when it is done efficiently, it changes or it transforms karma into a yoga. The science says that if my work produces fulfillment instead of anxiety or stress, that is detached work. That is the real Vijnana that is spoken of in the Bhagavad Gita. So, whatever inner experience my work produces, it provides a good test to determine whether I have detached or not. When I am doing some work, is it making me happy? Is it making me love what I am doing? That is the test that we have to put before ourselves. Working compulsively, just as a slave, is not yoga, it is a roga. It is not yoga, definitely. Workaholics are not yogis. No, workaholics are not yogis. But working with love, that is real yoga. So that is where we come to the next verse, which is synonymous with this. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. I'll just go through the verse and conclude for today. Yogastaha kuru karmani. Yogastaha, that means with your mind steadfast, with your mind firm. Karmani kuru, perform your actions. How? Tyaktva sangam. Dhananjaya, O Dhananjaya, perform it with, by abandoning the sangam, that means attachment. Siddhi asiddhyoho. Siddhi means success. Asiddhi is failure. Siddhi asiddhyoho. Abandoning in success and in failure. Samo bhutva, being alike, being equanimous. Samaha means equanimous. Samat, karma kuru, that means perform the action. Karmani kuru. Samatvam yoga uchyate. What is yoga? Yoga is evenness of mind. Samatvam yoga uchyate. See, the essence of the Bhagavad Gita is given in this verse. Yogastaha kur karmani. This is the operative part of the Bhagavad Gita. Operative part is perform all your actions. How? By becoming a yogi. Not by becoming a rogi or a bhogi, but by becoming a yogi. Yogasthaha. Sthaha means to be established. Established. Firmly being established. Sri Ramakrishna used to say to all householder devotees, look here, you need to perform actions in your daily life. There is no doubt about that. But before doing that, first acquire this firmness or this dependence on the divine. And he used to give a very homely example in Bengal and also in villages. The women or even men also, in those days they were not using this stitched cloth and all that, you see. So they would, in the corner of the cloth, they would tie their keys or they would tie their the money, whatever it is, and it will be there hanging, and they will perform all the actions. So in one corner, the most important thing that you need at home is there in one corner of your cloth. Probably the money or the keys to the house, it is always there. But you are performing all of your actions at the same time, it is safely with you. In the same way, perform your actions having safely the presence of the divine with you all the time. That is called as yogastaha. It's a very simple example, but a very powerful one for us. Keep the most important thing in your life, that is the divine, first safely in a corner of your heart, and you keep on performing all of your actions. And once the work is over, untie the knot, take out the keys or the money, and then do whatever you are supposed to do. So this is the essence of this verse, yogastaha.